strikes often, in Slovenia at least, they are, as a rule, strikes of the privileged state employees. In what sense privileged? They are relatively well paid and they have a stable, permanent job. They don't have this precarious anxiety of precariousness, what will happen, and so on and so on. Isn't this very sad that what is the symbol of workers' resistance, a strike, becomes a privilege?
I did want to ask, because you're just talking right now about U.S. politics, specifically the Biden administration, and how like you still think that there are some leftists who think the state isn't necessary, for example. When it comes to the Biden administration, because there are things I would agree with you, he's doing, say, better than Trump, right? When it comes to the environment. But how does the left in the modern era still combat with the fact that it is still a dominant neoliberal ideology?
Here, I will give you a totally crazy answer.
Okay.
For which I'm provoking, but seriously.
Okay.
What neoliberalism? It is clear. I was convinced by my friends, not totally. I have doubts, but nonetheless, Yanis Varoufakis, Jody Dean, and others, that first, neoliberalism was up to a point always a myth. It was a notion that the developed countries used to put pressure on poor African countries or third world countries, like diminish the state, allow free competition, which means allow our companies to exploit nature and country. But if you look closely, what is happening in the last decades, my God, the states are really getting stronger and stronger. Not, of course, healthcare and so on, they try to pull out there. But if you look at really successful, in capitalist terms, I'm not trying to sell any leftist ideology here, countries like, think about, I don't know, not so much China, as don't forget others, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore. This is not liberal capitalism. This is extremely strong role of the state, which in a very planned way selects, okay, we will support these industries, that industries, and so on and so on. And they do something which Western liberal democracies, because of their electoral system, cannot do it. I'm horrified by China. I'm no fan of them. But I met once a Chinese guy, an official guy, who made a point, who told me, listen, with you it's a problem, you just worry about the next 2 years, 4 years elections. While he was a little bit cynical. He said, haha, we know who is in power. But precisely that allows us to think in the terms of decades. It's not what will happen in 2 years. It's what will environment be 30, 40 years from now. Not just to talk about this. We have all those predictions, you know, in 2050 catastrophe. But no, they, in a wrong way, I don't think it will work, that authoritarian way. But, you know, we will need to establish not a Chinese authoritarian one, but some form of collective decision making, which will not function in this rhythm of every 2 years you have elections and so on and so on. That is so important for me. So my first problem with neoliberalism is this one, that we already don't have it. Look again what happened with the pandemic. What neoliberalism? I know Trump was cheating, much money went only to companies, but nonetheless, state intervened, printing trillions of money and so on. It was the same in Europe. So it's not that second thing. Now I come, you I'm sure you and your listeners know it. Again, I have doubts with this term, but it describes something, the so-called corporate neo-feudalism or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want to jump too quickly there, but what I tried to develop in many of my books, I often repeat myself, I call this ecological writing, recycling. But what I want to say is that, to put it in orthodox Marxist terms, Marx speaks about the privatization of commons. Commons in the sense of not just woods, forests accessible to everybody, but in the sense of the air we breathe, the market, mediums of communication, and so on. Now these commons themselves are privatized, but they remain commons. Like you buy books, more or less soft monopoly by Amazon. We are probably now using some Microsoft or whatever device. So I'm saying, you see the paradox. We experience ourselves as free and so on, but the space in which we move is already controlled by a big company, which is then usually, again, controlled or linked to a state, as my good friend Julian Assange put it. I love that Google is really a private counterpart to NSA, to National Security Agency.
That's a good way of putting it.
So what I want to say is that that's why, as following some Italian economists, although that's not my specific topic, I try to develop the standard capitalist development was from rent to profit. But now we are in a way returning to rent. Look, sorry, my own example. Look at somebody like Bill Gates. Where do his billions come from? He probably pays his workers, I don't know, even relatively well. It's not this, it's that he owns one of our commons and we are paying him rent, double rent, not just this. Financial and so on, we also allow ourselves to him to collect data about us, all this media, especially Facebook, and regulate what information. So this is where we are today. Some people even go so far here, like Yanis Varoufakis, that claim it's no longer capitalism. I wouldn't go so far. I just think that, and I know that these mega corporations still control a relatively small percentage of our production. But I see, nonetheless, a new axis becoming important. On the one hand, these mega corporations which control our commons, and we are paying them rent, even in public transport, instead of taxi companies, you get Uber. You know what is so interesting in Uber? It's that workers who work in Uber are usually own their own means of production.
The cars,
you have your own car. If you are a programmer, you have your own PC and so on and so on. So you are exploited without social security and so on. But in spontaneous ideology, the system is selling this to you as your extra freedom. They said, you see, you are not a wage worker, you are precarious, which means for them, new freedom, you can, you search for contract here, there, you are a kind of an individual small entrepreneur. So this is the new constellation. And since now I will make another very provocative move, since you have now in Canada, and it's exploding everywhere, these truckers strike and so on and so on. I don't know how it is with you, but even in my, as Donald Trump would have put it shithole of a country, Slovenia, although his wife was from here. It was so interesting that, you know who dares to strike in Slovenia? Highly paid state employees. For example, in hospitals, not the nurses, but top paid doctors. They're paid by state. Most hospitals are still public, and they know that they scare the shit out of the people if they go on strike, who will operate me, and so on and so on. So to be in a position to be able to strike, to go on a strike without really threatening your existence, it's a very privileged position here. You know, that's said that
100%
those
right on this.
ordinary people who work in small companies, even big, they don't dare even to think about strike, by God. The boss will tell them, okay, fuck off, no problem. I mean, this is why I think that strikes often, in Slovenia at least, they are, as a rule, strikes of the privileged state employees. In what sense privileged? They are relatively well paid and they have a stable, permanent job. They don't have this precarious anxiety of precariousness, what will happen, and so on and so on. Isn't this very sad that what is the symbol of workers' resistance, a strike, becomes a privilege?
Yeah.
You know what worries me even, and I have the same problem with remaining radical leftist, communist, blah, blah, but with working class today. Who is today the working class? It became clear that you have absolutely to include a series of other people, not only precarious workers who, and this is an ingenious trick, like since you as a precarious worker, as a small entrepreneur, propose, do contracts with a company, it's no longer, this prevents any solidarity, more or less, among, at least in my country, among precarious workers. Because you experience the company with which you make a contract as kind of a transparent mediator, just an anonymous agency, and you see as competitors other precarious workers. So it prevents solidarity.
Creates antagonism.
That's the precarious workers should be included. Then, as many good economists from Italy, United States, Bolivia pointed out, you know, Marx knew it, but underestimated this key distinction between valorized and non-valorized work. Valorized simply means that you are paid a regular wage in this sense that your work produces value. But wasn't it one of the lessons of the pandemic that as a good Marxist, I forgot his name, sorry, recently put it, for the capitalist valorization to function, it must be supported by the unpaid, formally not included into capital's circulation, non-valorized work. In small stores, your relatives helping you, the wife at home doing the work, and so on and so on. So it's crucial today to include in the overall scheme of exploitation this non-valorized workers. And next thing, some of my ecologically oriented Marxists pointed out, they call this, it's a clumsy term, no longer exploitation of work, but more exploitation of existence, of your conditions of existence. You in Canada, no, your Trudeau was a little bit disappointed here that fracking and so on, basically it goes on, no, and so on. Why is this tragic? Because at least I read some reports on how it's really ruining the countryside. Indigenous people who usually live close to those sites, they are not exploited formally. They are not paid, they are just ignored, but their conditions of existence are ruined. And this is no longer marginal today. I know because I have friends there in Ecuador. The previous president, Rafael Correa, lost his job precisely because he tries to limit this exploitation of existence. Big companies, mining, ruining environment, and without formally directly exploiting local people, ruining their conditions of existence. And are we aware how many things are happening along these lines today? For example, now people no longer talk about it, but do you remember a couple of years ago, the big topic was Somali pirates?
Yes.
Yeah, but you know why they exploded? Because international foreign fishermen, fishing boats, especially Chinese, one must say this, totally devastated the sea there, leaving no fishes. And the way they survived on the coast was fishing and so on. We have to include all this in today's situation. It's no longer this clear image, exploited workers. There are different variations of exploitation and so on and so on. So the second thing I want to say is also that now people often ask me, you must be crazy. What do you think by communism? No, I'm giving them a very simple answer. Yes, I know I was a dissident. I was 7 years unemployed in 1970s. But my God, listen, I give them, I repeat it, I know, I often say this, a very simple answer. Don't read any communist literature. Just look what the media are telling us, even the official media. We need global cooperation, already from the pandemic. Only global cooperation where most people will be, okay, now it's no longer vaccination, but whatever, global cooperation is needed. Then with global warming and all these natural perturbances, probably tens of millions of people, if not hundreds, will have to move around. This is unthinkable without new forms of global cooperation, and it has to be global. And this is for me communism. Communism is for me the shortest definition. A social order which will be able really to do what even the official media are saying that we should do. Global cooperation. And so, for example, the big scandal is, and many, sorry for this ironic term, honest capitalists, bourgeois politicians are admitting this. Look, wasn't this a scandal? You know that in Europe now, with Omicron and different rules, we are destroying tens of millions of vaccines because their date of field was. Why didn't we say 2 months ago, okay, let's quickly send them to Africa, I don't know where, even a bigger scandal, this, how do you call it, copyright license. It should have been free, that you can produce, if you can, vaccines without paying for license. And I'm not here preaching some kind of a cheap socialism. Are we aware how many billions our state gave as a help to companies to develop vaccines? So, my God, we should get something back. So, you see, I am not this, non-alienation, paradise on earth. I'm a communist out of despair. I'm asking people just listen to the official media. They're all saying, idiots like Prince Charles are saying this. We need global cooperation, solidarity. I'm saying, okay, but do you seriously think that the existing order, global social political order, will be able to do this.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we beseech thee to smite down our enemies. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble court jesters, here to amuse you. To our lords, Trevor R., we give thanks for this spit of land for us to eke out this meager existence. To our knights, Merid, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Ellie Leslie, Alex P., Brandon, Words Greenwood, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevor Yanis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Cern 42, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our flag in a veil, and we salute you, our friends.